And we're live.
Hello and welcome back to another Didn't We Just Live This Movie in the Past Year episode of the First Time Watchers podcast.
And we're live.
Ah, nice. Nice. Yeah, my name is Tim Costa.
I'm Hermano de Silva.
And we're live.
Joining us tonight, our dear old friend, the man who knows where each punch, kick, and bullet is coming from before it happens, from writerandrew.com, Andrew Johnson. Welcome back to the show, Andrew.
Are we live?
Yes, we're live.
And we're live.
Okay. Oh boy, this will get tiresome real quick. Andrew, what's the latest with your high school film club? Is there anything?
Yes, actually, we're continuing to meet virtually. We were meeting every 2 weeks, and we've gone back to meeting every week. We have recently finished up a short unit on the films of Christopher Nolan, and we have begun a unit on subversive comedies. So far we have watched Some Like It Hot, and yesterday we watched Dr. Strangelove. So I am quite enjoying this unit, and students seem to be enjoying it as well and realizing that, older movies are funny too.
Andrew, I do hope you be careful in terms of your terminology when it comes to high school students enjoying your unit.
Phrasing.
Thank you. That's some really strong advice.
You know, Some Like a Hot is, I believe, a movie we discussed for the podcast a while back. And Dr. Strangelove, not a movie we discussed on the podcast, but I think a movie we should discuss on the podcast, to be honest with you. Wally, I know that's one of your favorite movies.
It is.
Yeah.
And I would not mind watching it again because it's great.
Hermano, have you ever seen Dr. Strangelove?
I owe it to you guys, but I still haven't seen it.
Oh, there it is. There it is. It's scheduled in the near future. Absolutely.
There we go.
I'll just go ahead and tell you that a lot of the jokes still hold up. First comment a student made immediately after the opening narration, the first shot appears and a student said, "Oh, that looks like a penis."
Very good.
And I said, "Yep, you got it."
Very
just
nice.
Wait.
Very nice. Moving on, you can always send feedback to us. You can email us at firsttimewatchers@gmail.com. And in this episode, we'll be discussing the latest Joe Carnahan film, Boss Level. But before we get into that, it is time for Yay or Nay. This is the part of the show where we discuss what we have seen recently on our own. Andrew.
Okay, I'll quickly go over a few things. I saw The Little Things on HBO Max.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, me too. It is not very good. It's basically a total ripoff of Seven and plenty of other crime movies, much better crime movies in my opinion. So yeah, I would avoid it. Though I will say the performances were pretty good, especially Jared Leto as Sasquatch.
Amazing.
Really, yes.
We talked about this a couple of weeks ago because Hermano mentioned it. He's the one that was the first to say positive things about Leto's performance.
Well, here's the thing. The rest of the movie is so typical and standard fare that Leto is at least going for something, so I got to give him credit for that. You can debate whether or not it works, but he's making some choices and sticking to them. Let's see. I also rewatched Coming to America. Still holds up. Good movie. And then I watched Coming to America, the sequel. I will say I did not hate the sequel as much as many people seem to have hated the sequel. I don't think it's terrible. I think it's just fine. It's mediocre. There were some parts that made me laugh. There were some parts that made me cringe and think they were just going back to the well and mining some of the same jokes a little too many times. But overall, I thought it was fine. Last two things I will mention that I've seen. WandaVision. I gotta mention WandaVision since everyone's talking about WandaVision.
Yeah, but let's talk about this a little bit because I just finished this as well.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. See, okay, I probably don't have as harsh of feelings as you do, but yeah, it's fine. You know what I want to see? I want to see this as a 90-minute fan-made film.
Yes, I think that this is the type of material that would be totally fine as just a regular 2 hour superhero movie. But stretched out to 8 or 9 episodes, however long it was, it is just so boring a lot of the time and redundant, and then it just concludes with more CGI superhero battle nonsense like we've seen a million times before,
Yeah,
and
instead of
it's boring.
yeah, instead of a big blue beam in the sky, it's a big red beam in the sky. And so I think I was most interested in the parts where they were connecting to other parts of the MCU, to be honest with you. And I was least interested in when it started working its way towards Vision's confusion and Wanda's grief. I like the first couple episodes and how well they execute the sitcoms they're riffing on. I think the execution there is interesting and nice and cute. But once you get kind of past that and into the grander scheme of it all, I'm like, okay, yeah, I find myself being bored a lot of the times.
Yeah, I actually don't like the fact that there's so many connections to the broader MCU. It just feels like another example of Marvel putting out just more product, more content that's going to be part of their overall broader vision of what's coming next, what's coming next. Just once I would like to watch a Marvel movie without having to be reminded of the whole cinematic universe and what could be coming next and what character might we reveal, or oh, is it going to be the multiverse or something? And I'm just like, I don't care. I don't care. I mean, Scarlet Witch was a fairly boring character in the movies to me anyway. Vision wasn't much better. I think the show delved into them somewhat intriguingly at times, but not enough for me to really get emotionally invested. There's that line that's been going around the internet about grief and how it's just love persevering. I will say I like that line. I'm not going to hate on that line. I actually think that's a really well done line, and Paul Bettany performs it well. I don't think the rest of the show earns that line with its exploration of grief or whatever supposedly mature and adult themes Marvel claims it's trying to explore here.
I've long abandoned any hope for not having all of these movies or series connecting dots from one to the other, and I've realized this is what it is, and I'm fine with it. As long as they make no bones about it and try to hide it or anything like that. It's pretty plain and open, and I'm like, okay, fine, I get it. So once I see those connective dots, I'm okay. So what else have you seen?
The last thing I'll mention is I saw a lovely little film called Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar.
I saw this.
And I quite enjoyed it. It's the kind of movie where I think if you can get on its wavelength,
yeah,
you will have a wonderful time. It's just light and fun, and at times absurd and goofy, but a lot of the jokes hit. It's just so positive. It's really what I needed here a year into a pandemic. So I really, really like Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. Speaking of sequels and cinematic universes, I would happily watch a sequel to Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, and I'd love to see them go somewhere else. Barb and Star go to Los Angeles. Sure, let's do it. So yeah, that would be my big yay. Would be Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. So if you haven't seen it, check it out.
Who would have thunk that Jamie Dornan would not put on one of the best performances of the year, but also one of the best scenes of the year where he sings to a seagull?
Yes, and it's like sometimes that's all I need is just like a musical number out of nowhere between a grown man and a bird.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Give me more of that, please. Can we have some of that in the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Maybe in the next James Gunn Guardians of the Galaxy. Who knows?
You know what? If that movie turns out to be a musical, I might take back every bad thing I ever said about the first Guardians of the Galaxy.
Nice.
So.
What about you, Wally? What have you seen?
And we're live.
Oh boy.
So I rewatched while I was cleaning the house. I threw on good old the Dark Knight Rises as a rewatch just to have something on. And like I think the more times that I revisit this movie, I think the more and more I'm convinced it's I still don't think that Christopher Nolan is the be all end all of directors. Especially in like the way it's like some of the way like stuff is delivered. Like when you're not watching and just hear the lines being like said, and like, huh, yeah, that's an interesting choice. All right, but I mean, it's still a yay. It's still exciting. Bane's still up until the last 5 minutes is still one of the best characters in the DC extended universe. Until they explain him away, which ruins it. But yeah, it's still a yay. And I also caught up on a TV series that I started watching. Just kind of fell into it. Also from last year, The Ripper. Investigators and witnesses recall how a modern-day Jack the Ripper terrorized the north of England during the late 1970s. A lot of interviews with people who were involved in the case, people who were actively working on the case, people who were victims of the Ripper. And as it goes along, where the time frame it takes place, like it really got me thinking, up until the final episode, like it just feels like there's like a connection between this case and the case from New Bedford that would come almost 10 years later, where similar women who were being taken off the streets, murdered, and then dumped off of Route 88 over in Westport. This mirrors a lot of that. Actually, it's really weird. And just I mean, in the Ripper's case, you find out how they managed to catch him. In the case in New Bedford, they've never found the guy. There's been suspicion as to who it is, but they never caught him. But I would say the Ripper is a pretty fascinating case. The last episode will really make you go, and how it all plays out. But yeah, definitely worth taking out. That's also a yay.
All right, I'll go next, and I'll just mention one thing, and that is also another Disney Plus series that I finally caught up and finished is the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian. I don't know. I guess it's another show that I find is just fine. It's fine. It's fine. I don't know. I don't have much to say about it other than I guess I appreciate I appreciate and I really like some aspects of it. Like there are some scenes that really do bring back the feel, the tone, the excitement of the original trilogy. I'm thinking specifically of a scene in which an episode in season 2 that Carl Weathers himself directed, where they're in a transport vehicle and they're being chased by TIE fighters and also stormtroopers on speeder bikes, and that whole scene, just the way it's edited, it's executed, is really thrilling. There's other scenes and other moments and other just even almost entire episodes where I'm kind of bored. I'm kind of bored because there's not much that happens. There's a lot of walking. So, like I said, the good is, you're exploring a larger part of this galaxy that you have a lot of other people and characters that have no connective tissue, essentially, to the core films that we're all aware of. But then there's others, and that I kind of roll my eyes. I'm like, okay, I don't care. I don't care if I spoil it. Boba Fett shows up, for example, and I'm like, okay, all right. I'm vaguely aware of the story in which he survives the Sarlacc pit, and I'm like, oh, and it's not really covered or mentioned in this. It's just he shows up and he's really wants his gear back. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool to see him, but then there's another character that shows up at the very end of season 2, and I'm like, yeah, I kind of see this coming. I had already heard about it too, but I see where this is going, and I'll say the CGI of this character is awful. So in Rogue One, we saw CGI Grand Moff Tarkin, which is unbelievable. It's really great. It holds. I think it looks amazing. But they try to do the same work for this character at the end of season 2. I think Hermano, you've seen this, right?
I have.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Yeah, and it's awful looking. It's so distracting. I'm not sure that the moment itself bothered me. I think what bothered me the most was the execution of how this character looks, and I'm like, no, this is awful. Like I said, overall the series is fine. It's a good western. There's good moments. I do applaud Pedro Pascal for taking on this role where he for 95% of the series has not shown his face. And that takes a lot of putting your pride aside as an actor to do this. So they force it. I think in a way, the way they write it so that he has to take his helmet off is fine. Because I can't begrudge an actor who probably has said, "Look, I need to show my face at one point or another." And the way it is fine. Hermano, what do you think of these 2 seasons?
I think I enjoyed them more than you did. I mean, a lot of this stuff, like you already kind of mentioned, the Boba Fett thing. Like, I feel like you need like a previous knowledge. Like, I'd kind of heard that there was like a book or something, where a comic where they kind of flesh out like the Boba Fett survived the Sarlacc pit, and he goes on adventures or whatever. I mean, if you have that knowledge, you go into it, and you don't mind that they don't flesh it out, or cue a flashback where you see him crawling out of it or something. And I'm fine with all that stuff. Like, I think as far as Star Wars stuff goes, I think the bar was pretty low for me, considering most of the movies that have come out recently I haven't really enjoyed, especially the last one. I thought Rise of Skywalker was maybe probably my least favorite Star Wars movie of all time. And so watching The Mandalorian, it kind of took that bad taste out of my mouth a little bit.
That's fair.
I think the bar was low, so maybe I'm giving it maybe a slight bump because of a lot of the trash that's come out lately. But I think overall, I think it's a pretty solid show, like a kind of an episodic.
That's the thing that kind of threw me off at first. I found its pacing and its structure very similar to like Star Trek, because it is that episodic, like an event of the week type of show, and there's a basic overarching story, but it follows this whole pattern though of he needs to get to this place, and once he gets to this place he can't do the thing unless he helps the person, and the person will help him do this thing once he completes the mission for this person, and it's rinse and repeat. It's the same thing over and over again. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah, I agree. I don't disagree. It's kind of that.
Andrew, you've seen this show?
I have. It's fine. I agree with a lot of what you said. I think the issue with The Mandalorian is that it has so much promise as a series. It is supposedly separate from the movies, and you could theoretically follow this entirely new group of characters and go to strange new places and have really cool little stories set within the Star Wars universe. And yet, because this is owned by Disney, they will not really do a whole lot with that. I feel like the show really does not live up to its potential. Baby Yoda is essentially just there to sell merchandise and toys and be memed. And as you mentioned, in the second season in particular, they really start to make strong connections back to the more mainstream feature films, and it not only doesn't really make sense, in my opinion, narratively a lot of the time when they do that, it also just feels very cynical and cheap and just like pandering to fans. It doesn't really seem to fit the story, in my opinion, and I was very, very disappointed in that respect by season 2. I felt like season 2 took a lot of the negative issues, my criticisms of season 1, and I think both the good and the bad were really, really pushed to further extremes in season 2. I will probably still watch season 3, but I'm just really overall not a fan of what Disney has done with Star Wars. I think they've made one good Star Wars movie and one okay Star Wars movie. Um, and I think when it comes to stuff like The Mandalorian, a lot of the problem is they took the expanded universe and said it was no longer canon, and yet they're continuing to utilize some of it. It's like they're picking and choosing which parts they like and want to keep, and which parts they want to not keep, or which parts they want to just kind of pay homage to, and it just doesn't feel like they have a really coherent vision of their own, in my opinion, and I'm disappointed by that as a Star Wars fan.
Fair enough. Hermano, what have you seen?
All right, I watched two very different things. First, I picked up another streaming service called Paramount Plus.
Wow.
Tim, can you guess what I watched?
I cannot. No.
The new SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run. So for obvious reasons, my kids are maniacs for SpongeBob, so this is the third SpongeBob movie. I've seen all the other ones. I've seen this one twice already. This one, once again, Plankton wants that Krabby Patty formula, so his plan this time involves kidnapping SpongeBob's pet snail Gary and sending him off to the lost city of Atlantic City, where SpongeBob figures that out, goes on an adventure with Patrick. They're guided by a cameo from Keanu Reeves as a sage, who is also a sagebrush. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen any of the SpongeBob movies. This is probably my least favorite. It's more of the same, and there's another new series on Paramount Plus. It's like another new SpongeBob series. It kind of features like 3D animation versus the original like 2D. And I felt like the third act of the movie was basically like a 30-minute commercial for the new series on Paramount Plus. It's almost shameful how much they do these flashbacks and they involve the new series, and it's just, I just felt like I was watching a really long like YouTube ad or something for a new show. So it's okay. It's perfect for kids. My kids loved it, but obviously not a lot for me. So it's like a mild yay. And then I paired that with a series on Netflix called Murder Among the Mormons.
Huh.
Have you guys heard of Murder Among the Mormons?
I have heard of it.
I did see that recently too. That's some wild shit.
You know, unbeknownst to me, I went into this. Oh, by the way, it's directed by or co-directed by Jared Hess, director of Napoleon Dynamite. He directs, I think, 3 episodes. Someone else, I forget whose name, directs the other 3. Basically, it involves this story of these document collectors who, in the 80s, they were collecting all these rare documents. This one guy in particular was collecting a lot of early documentation chronicling the inception of Mormonism, and he comes across this like really, really old, like, of the founder of the Mormon religion. I think it was John Smith or something like that, and finds this document that kind of goes against the story of how the Mormon religion got started, and changes it from him, John Smith, convening with an angel and giving them like this, like sort of like this, these golden tablet or something. And instead of meeting with an angel in this document, it says that he met with a white salamander. So the letter is known as the White Salamander letter. And of course, this can like upend the Mormon religion. It kind of changes it from like, you know, a god type thing, an angels, to like more of a magic.
I don't know, man.
I don't. Talking salamander.
I don't think it's any more ridiculous than the original story.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, what does it matter? Like, they're both equally ridiculous. But of course, the Mormon leaders of the time didn't find it so funny or amusing. The title is Murder Amongst the Mormons, so I'm not spoiling anything. But all of a sudden, these bombings start happening, and there's this mystery involving surrounding, I guess, like, is this like some Mormon fanatic who doesn't want this stuff coming out and like, you know, changing everything they thought they knew about the religion, or is it like, you know, something else? Is it like the leaders of the Mormon religion? Are they like, calling out people to bomb, the people that are coming up with these documents and blah, blah, blah. It's pretty fascinating. Unbeknownst to me, I'd sort of already known this story. It was originally I'd seen a condensed version on probably the greatest show of all time, Forensic Files. Saw a half an hour, episode of this story. But this is about 3 hours, 3 episodes, kind of goes into it. It's pretty fascinating. Features a pretty cool light blue Toyota MR2, which was one of my favorite cars from the 80s.
Hell yeah.
That was cool. So, I recommend it. If you're into true crime stuff, I think it's a pretty quick watch. It's only like slightly under 3 hours. So, yeah, Murder Among the Mormons is EA.
Hello, my name is Elder Young. Did you know that Jesus lived here in the USA? You can read all about it now. In this nifty book, it's free. No, you don't have to pay. Hello, my name is Elder Smith. And can I leave this book with you for you to just peruse? Hello. I'll just leave it here. It has a lot of information you can really use. Hello. Hi. My name is Jesus Christ. You have a lovely home. Hello. It's an amazing book. Don't you? Hola. Me llamo Elder White. This book gives you the secret to eternal life. Eternal life.
So how many do we know of so far?
How many of what?
Oh, hey, Andrew.
Yeah, our co-host is up to something with these pods.
Whoa, is Wally in there?
It looks like it.
Oh, cool.
No, don't encourage him in the off chance he can hear you.
Well, you know what show we encourage you to listen to on a regular basis?
The In Session Film Podcast.
That's right, Andrew. The In Session Film Podcast is JD and Brendan. Hey, wait a second.
Yeah, that's usually my line. Anyways.
Each week, the In Session Film Podcast chooses a movie to review.
Then creates a top 3 list based on what they just saw.
This week, the In Session Film Podcast is reviewing Disney's latest Raya and the Last Dragon.
And continue their Terrence Malick series with 1998's The Thin Red Line.
You can find their show on Apple Podcasts by searching for, you guessed it, the In Session Film Podcast.
Or on the web at insessionfilm.com.
So if you're looking for more great movie reviews and discussion, then check out the In Session Film Podcast on Apple Podcasts.
Or on the web at insessionfilm.com.
So, what do you think Wally's trying to do with all this?
We can only guess.
Ding dong! Just take this book. It's free from me. You simply won't believe how much it's free. Change this book. This book will change your life, so you won't burn in hell. You're gonna die someday, but if you read this book, you'll see that there's another way. Eternity.
On the Simplistic Reviews podcast, we talk movies. We talk TV. We talk.
Hello, Julie, what the heck are you doing?
Trying to make our spots sound more exciting by adding explosions.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you could have got the point across with sound effects, not the real thing.
Download the show on iTunes or at simplisticreviews.blogspot.com.
I'm sure your insurance company will cover that.
No, they won't.
No, they probably won't.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Okay, let's talk about Boss Level.
I should have tried to call Gemma back when I was drunk and horny and I didn't give a shit. I didn't know how important it was. I didn't know it'd be the last time that I'd ever hear a voice. Some things you can't redo. And some things you're forced to do over and over again. I know this whole thing leads back to her. I just have no idea what this whole thing actually is.
Did you get my birthday present, Roy? Did you get it? The present?
I don't know, I haven't checked.
Well, please do. I sent it a few days ago. Remember this. Osiris.
Happy birthday, Roy. May you always live your life forward and always remember, time waits for no man. XOXO. Oh, fuck me. Let's do that again.
The plot. A retired Special Forces officer is trapped in a never-ending time loop on the day of his death. The director, Joe Carnahan, the actors, Frank Grillo, Mel Gibson, Naomi Watts. Andrew, what did you think of this latest action film by Joe Carnahan that dropped on Hulu?
So I watched this movie less than 24 hours ago, and I have already forgotten most of it. I will say this. I remember while I watched it, I enjoyed it overall, and yet it left no impact on me. There's really nothing substantial to it. I think Frank Grillo does a decent job. I like seeing him as the lead in action movies like this. I think that Joe Carnahan is a talented action filmmaker. There is a part of me that really wishes he had gotten to make a Mission Impossible movie, as he was in development for quite some time. I believe it was years and years ago. It was rumored he was going to do a Mission Impossible film. I would have liked to have seen that. I think he's got some really strong action directing chops.
I mean, like more so than what Christopher McQuarrie has proven himself to be.
Well, okay, so this will get us off on a tangent, but when it comes to the Mission Impossible series, as much as I enjoy what Christopher McQuarrie has done, I liked it when Mission Impossible was a series in which new directors were always coming in to kind of bring their own unique stamp and style on things. And I think Joe Carnahan, I want to say he was for a long time supposed to be making Mission Impossible 3 or 4, maybe. And I think he would have done something interesting with it. I don't know if it would have been good, but I think it would have been interesting at the very least. So there's some entertaining action stuff in this movie. I don't think it leaves a big impression, and I'm not sure if that's because of the budget or because, honestly, the biggest criticism I have of this movie is there is voiceover narration that persists throughout the entire film, and it drove me bananas. And I just found myself thinking, shut up with the voiceover, show me, don't tell me. I don't know if they have all that voiceover because they couldn't afford to shoot more scenes of exposition, perhaps, to lay out what was happening or what. But by the end of the movie, I was desperate not to hear Frank Grillo's voice and just to watch him do what he does action-wise. So overall, I would say it's fine. It's nothing particularly memorable, but I hope Frank Grillo gets to do more stuff.
Wally, we were originally supposed to be discussing the Orson Welles film The Stranger, which probably is quite different than this. And when I saw that this had dropped on Hulu on Friday, I threw it out to you two saying, you know what? I wonder what you guys thought. And you were quick to react by saying, oh, yeah, we're going to do this. So do you think it was a wise decision?
I enjoyed this movie quite a bit. In fact, I would say I loved this movie. This had me smiling from ear to ear. So I'm sure that I will enjoy our Orson Welles selection. But I also really wanted to see this. And so when the opportunity came up, and I was like, heck yeah! I don't want to miss out on this concept. And not disappointed that this is what we went with this week. Absolutely love it. This movie had me from like the opening scene, like where he's like fighting like nonchalantly and kind of giving you like the backdrop as to what the hell's going on. I'm like, this is exactly my jam. And it never really stops being my jam throughout the whole thing. I think the only time it oddly enough gets kind of bogged down is the scenes with Mel Gibson, which is weird for me because I like Mel Gibson as an actor. I think he's in that Nick Cage category. He's always going to be like probably one of the most entertaining things you're going to see in film, no matter which movie you're watching of his. He has, charisma, but in this movie, he's not really given a heck of a lot to do. And I think that's probably what it is that he's, as a villain, there's no fleshing out of him. Will Sasso's character is more fleshed out than Mel Gibson's character is. in this. And I think that's pretty much where this movie suffers, is that like you get a big bad, but like he's not really a big bad. I mean, there's not really any threat. Like, you know, the swordsman is a bigger bad than Mel Gibson is. You know what I mean? He's just kind of like an engine to be a villain, and I think that's where this movie falls flat.
How different is that than any, you know, other, I don't know, action video game that this movie is riffing on, where the big bad Mel Gibson is just doing the bad thing because he's a bad guy?
But we never actually see what Mel Gibson doing the bad thing.
Or he's having
it's alluded to.
Right. He has this big master plan. He has other people do the big bad thing, but he's ultimately the guy behind it all.
Yeah, but like all right, look at Final Fantasy. At least in like a Final Fantasy game, you will see the bad guy in cutscenes doing bad guy things.
Okay.
You know what I mean, setting up for the conflict later. It happens. Look at Double Dragon. We'll go all the way back to like 8-bit Nintendo. Bad guy walks up to the chick, slugs her in the gut, and walks off with her. You clearly see a bad guy.
Well, okay, fine. I don't see this movie being much different than the Double Dragon movie.
But you don't get a gut slug from Mel Gibson outside of the fact that like he's kind of a mastermind. Bill Sasso's the one that's getting his hands dirty.
Okay, I guess so. Hermano, what did you think of this? And do you also think it was a good change of pace to The Stranger?
Well, I think it's perfect for our podcast.
That's fair.
I was most excited. I think where Frank Grillo probably excited you guys the most. I was most excited because it was Joe Carnahan. I've been a fan of his from the past. I mean, I love the A-Team. I thought he did something pretty incredible with what I thought could have been really bad. Just another like 80s TV show turned into a movie, and I thought he made that movie a lot of fun. And he gets really good performances out of like these characters, like, and typically in movies, even Smoking Aces, I'll defend. Like, there are a lot of quirky, interesting characters in that film. Where in this one, I feel like, I mean, the obvious comparison for me, like I immediately thought of, and to be honest, I'm kind of already tired of this subgenre of time loop films. I feel like it's kind of becoming what vampire movies and zombie movies were for a while. Like it's oversaturated. I'm tired of the concept. I don't think anyone's doing anything that interesting. I think the last interesting time loop movie I saw was either Looper or Live, Die, Repeat, which I think is the closest comparison this film is to another film. Except I think this one buys into the whole, where Live, Die, Repeat sort of had a, die and repeat, kind of like a video game sort of concept where you got infinite lives or something. This one obviously buys way more into other aspects of video games. The like the kind of the speed run aesthetic. He has to like move quickly at times, kind of like he has limited time to complete something, an objective. There's other things. Obviously there's a scene where he's playing video games literally in the movie. But I think I agree with Wally. I think Mel Gibson's, I just think he's wasted in this film. Like, he has nothing to do. He's a bad guy, but I agree. It's like a really cliche bad guy, kind of wasted on Mel Gibson. Like, I feel like anyone could have done that. Didn't really need him. And then even more so, I thought Naomi Watts was absolutely fucking wasted in this film. Like, she is way too good to be in this film. Like, Frank Grillo.
Right, yes.
He's perfect for this. This is perfect for Frank Grillo. He's fun. He probably the best I've seen him, even better than Beyond Skyline. And I hated that movie, but I thought he was one of the better things about it. But he's great in this. Like, he's got a lot of energy, charisma. In a film like this, editing is important, and I think it's pretty well edited. Like, you're rinsing and repeating a lot of scenes, and it's edited pretty well. Like, you see the same thing play out over and over, and just like Live, Die, Repeat, I think the editing was really phenomenally done in that. So overall, I'm just glad it was only an hour and a half. I think it's fun for the most part. Like, Joe Carnahan squeezes the absolute most he can out of this tired concept, but yeah, I don't know that he completely saves the film for me.
I agree with you on Naomi Watts. She outclasses everybody here. It's like her talent just like jumps off the screen. And it's like, why is she in this movie? How did look? Frank Grillo is a co-producer on this movie. You know, he's obviously developed a pretty good relationship with Joe Carnahan, and how they landed Naomi Watts is beyond me. Yeah, no, you mentioned the Groundhog Day aspect, but I think when you mix it with like Scott Pilgrim versus the World, a little bit of that, it's fun. It's fun, but it does lack a little bit of visual flair for that I think is necessary for such a high concept film, which is also interesting considering Carnahan, you know, I think knows how to use effects and camera and stage action scenes, as you mentioned already. There's some parts where I don't think it fully gets across this video game feel at times. I wish it looked a little bit more side scrollery as they were trying to go for. There are times when he's walking, where Frank Grillo is walking, and he looks like I don't know, a character in a Grand Theft Auto game. Just his pace and his basic movements, walking movements, which is pretty funny. And while I was watching this, I was like, man, there's a trailer I've seen that I swear this reminds me of, and it's a Ryan Reynolds movie that's coming out sometime this year, supposedly, called Free Guy, where he discovers that he's actually an NPC inside a open world video game. And I thought, because I didn't know where this was going, and I was like, this seems awfully familiar compared to, you know, like that trailer that I saw. So I was wondering where that was going, and whether or not that would be the same thing, that where we'd find him. It is a fun movie, but I think there's something missing. There's just something missing, and I do think that Frank Grillo is serviceable, perfectly serviceable in this role, and holds his own for the material that's provided. But you know, when you're automatically reminded of Groundhog Day, there's a certain expectation. I think when you want to dig into a character and those existential meaning of life elements that make a movie like Groundhog Day so timeless, and the elements are there, it just doesn't dig into it. It's not interested in that at all, and that's fine, I guess, if you just want to have a 90-minute diversion. And I wonder if you replace Grillo with somebody that has I don't know, a bit more charisma than muscles. So yeah, no, I like this movie. It's fine. It's perfectly serviceable for what it is. Andrew, anything else you want to mention?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different things we could talk about in regards to this movie. I will say I'm about to complain a lot. So I will say one thing I like about this movie, it is a mid-budget film. It is a mid-budget action movie. Its budget, according to the internet, was around $45 million. I would like to see more mid-budget movies, period.
I agree.
So I'm glad that this got made. I guess my problem is I'm not sure where that money went, or rather, I'm not quite sure that money went to the right places. It seems clear to me watching the film that a lot of money was spent on some of the action scenes and some of the stunts, some of which do look pretty good. But as a result, I think the script is kind of weak. As y'all mentioned, the supporting actors they got, I mean, Naomi Watts and Mel Gibson are both fantastic. And I think even in their few scenes here, they act circles around Grillo, honestly. And I really wish that more was done with both of them. And I don't know why that didn't happen. I don't know if that was due to budgetary reasons. They couldn't afford them for longer than a few days of filming. I don't know what could have caused that, but I'm just thinking, why do you have such incredible actors in the form of Naomi Watts and Mel Gibson, and you're not going to use them to their full potential? I think one of you mentioned how we've seen a lot of movies like this lately. This whole issue of like repeating the same day over and over. I mean, we've had the Happy Death Day movies, Palm Springs last year. So it seems like this is a recurring theme and trend that's happening more and more, probably because everything is awful and it feels like nothing ever changes. So I can see why that would be a popular theme, but it really also seems to be colliding with this other trend that's we've seen in movies over the past 15 years of just video games and how video game culture and video game aesthetics has started to seep into filmmaking. And I don't think this movie does that particularly well either, especially with $45 million in its budget. I mean, if you look at a movie like Crank High Voltage, for example, that is a movie that is very much rooted in video game ideas and aesthetics and a premise to a certain extent about getting powered up. And that movie is less than half the budget of this one, and I feel like in some respects it's more kinetic, it's more exciting. It just feels a lot more alive in some respects than this, and I don't know why. I just feel like that $45 million budget really was not spent well.
It's because of Neville.
And like I said, yeah, go ahead.
It's because of Neville, Dean, and Taylor. That's why.
Well, right. They have their own special, unique filmmaking style, but Carnahan is no stranger to action. Carnahan can make an interesting action film. He can also do low budget stuff. I just get the impression he really seemed to struggle to make a compelling action film with this budget, with this premise. And like I said, it just really irritates me how much of the movie is told through voiceover. And I just keep thinking, would other filmmakers have been able to approach this material differently and been able to show more than they're telling outright? I mean, at one point, there's even a little monologue where Frank Grillo basically lays out the themes of the movie directly, like, oh yes, I've learned about how you matter to me the most or whatever, and I need to spend more time with my kid or blah blah blah. And it's like the script is so bad that he's literally just making the themes text rather than subtext, like the audience is a bunch of children who can't figure that out. And it like I said, it was an enjoyable movie to watch, but I've forgotten most of it, and the more I think about it, the more it kind of irritates me.
Wally, counterpoint.
I can't really counterpoint it that much. I mean, there is a lot of exposition isn't like the word for it, but
so you weren't as bothered by the constant voiceover as Andrew was?
No, it didn't bother me as much. I mean, it's moving the story along because there's only so much you can do with a setup like this. You know what I mean? Like it's a time loop, and explaining what's going on and getting into the characters is not enough time for something like that in a movie like this. So you have to have that voiceover to be able to move things forward, to see like where we're going to go next. It's kind of necessary.
Hermano, anything else you want to add before we get into spoilers?
Yeah, just I remembered some of the other things that I picked up on. I guess if you're like someone who plays video games quite a bit, you picked up on a lot of I guess slightly subtle things, specifically the woman swordsman, where he keeps dying to her over and over and over, and she keeps having the same catchphrase. That's a very video game thing, because obviously in a video game, dialogue wouldn't change. Like the boss or the character you're trying to beat will just keep saying the same thing over and over and over. So I thought that was pretty clever, with that character. I also felt like the variety of the different types of, assassins or people that are trying to get to him played off like a lot of different characters you'd find in different types of video games, like the little guy with the demolitions guy.
Yeah.
He seemed like something out of maybe like Grand Theft Auto or something. I don't know. Like there were a lot of. I think the movie definitely, dives into that whole video game aspect a lot more than
Yeah, also coming across like the character in the coffee shop who has information that he'll be able to use later on.
Yeah, and honestly, like I think it like Andrew and Wally have kind of talked about the I guess the narration or internal dialogue or whatever. I think that that works because I mean, considering that he's reliving the same day over and over, like all character interactions would basically start the same way every single day. So he's just, if he's not internally monologuing to himself, like, would we prefer that he just starts every conversation the same way, or just different variations of the same conversation, just talking to characters over and over? Like, I was fine with him just kind of thinking things through and getting his like internal dialogue as to what's going on in his head and how he's feeling about things, and how him talking about, oh, I've never made it this far, or like, oh, every time I make it to this point, this is where they get me, or blah blah blah. Like, I was fine with all that stuff. Like that bothered me the least out of anything. I think the thing that bothered me the most is that I don't know, I guess partially the budget. It's not quite as out there as like something like Smoking Aces or A-Team even for me. Like, it just felt like a kind of like a lower budget. Like, I think Joe Carnahan was kind of, he's probably better. I think he's better than something like this. So it was a little disappointing to see that he put this out.
Okay, let's get into spoilers. Oh, Wally, how did you like how this movie wrapped up?
And we're live.
Oh boy.
It made sense. You know what I mean? Like, I think the thing that was cracking me up the most was just him trying to storm the building. And I like it when an action movie plays against trope and does it cleverly. Like the first attempt is drive my car through the gates, crashes right into it, reinforced wall. Bill Sasso shows up, shoots him. Then as he's like trying to make his way through, he's constantly getting just like, ambushed at the elevator. Because he doesn't notice the camera at first, like in the elevator, and he's like, "Shit," you know what I mean? And the thing that also cracked me up too is like, he gets out and he thinks he's made it. Sasso and the guards come over and he's like, "Ah, fuck," and he shoots himself in the head, and like Bill Sasso's just like, "Huh, that was weird," and just like walks away. That was cracking me up. I also like how they use the time bending for him to learn how to use a sword. So like he's just going to pick up the skill over and over again every single time to try to get better, so that he can face this Guan Yin.
I kind of feel bad that who was the one that was teaching him this? Michelle Yeoh. Yeah, I kind of feel bad for Michelle Yeoh being so kind of pushed to the side, and that's all she does. She really doesn't have much to do in this movie.
Yeah, it would have been great to see more of her because I mean she's an action movie queen.
Sure,
I mean to see more of that. But again, like when you have a movie that's got to move quickly, you know what I mean? Like they got her in there. She does some stuff, and it's the Frank Grillo vehicle. I mean, I don't know how else you would be able to put more of Michelle in there outside of making her a villain.
I guess so. That's fair. Hermano, anything you want to mention about how this movie ended?
No, I think towards the end when he's trying to storm the building, I thought that was somewhat fun. That was the part that most reminded me of something like GTA. Like, it reminded me of, I've played a fair share of GTA, so it reminded me sort of like their larger scope missions where you gotta break into a casino or and there's like all these different ways you can go about it, and like him trying to like figure out over the course of many deaths how to get into this building, and each time he's thwarted, and learning how to fight with a sword through Michelle Yeoh and stuff, I thought was clever, kind of learning over many deaths and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I think the end where he figures out that he has about 14 minutes to see if he can save Naomi Watts really kind of encapsulated the whole speed run aspect of video games, where you have like a really short amount of time to do something or to beat something. So like I like all the video game like subtle references or overt references I think that was the stuff that really spoke to me, of course, because I've played video games a lot through my life. So, but as a movie, like, I don't know, it was fine. I'm just glad it didn't overstay its welcome. But it's like it was for Andrew for me. Like I saw this on Sunday, and I'm already struggling to remember certain things about it.
Yeah. Did you know that the guy on the helicopter shooting the machine gun is Rob Gronkowski?
Not till after.
Yeah.
I think someone else told me, or I read about it, and I was like, oh, really? I didn't even notice that was him.
Yeah.
Because he had a shirt on.
That's true. That's true. Absolutely.
And Frank Grillo's son is actually his actual son.
Yeah. That's a nice touch, I guess.
Oh, that was his actual son?
Yes.
That's an actual kid, yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Andrew, any last complaints, Andrew?
Yes. I will say so the very end, he goes through the Osiris machine or whatever, and then he wakes up again and realizes, okay, I'm in the same situation, except now supposedly he can die for real. And on the one hand, okay, I can see how maybe that is thematically appropriate to end there, like, all right, everything from now on really matters, so live life to the fullest kind of thing. But at the same time, I was just kind of thinking, well, wait, now I want to see if you actually do it. Like, now the stakes have been raised higher. Like, I wonder why wasn't that element brought in for the big climactic battle? Like, okay, now you've got to do it for real. Like, it's all or nothing. You could really die this time. So either save her or die for real. So I've got kind of mixed thoughts on the ending. The last thing I want to say, this conversation has kind of gotten me to think about some stuff, and maybe I'm being too cynical. But so one of you brought up how we've got this Ryan Reynolds movie coming out.
Yeah.
And we've just had so many movies over the past 15 years start to adopt themes or aesthetics or tropes from video games, even if they're not about video games explicitly, though we're seeing more and more movies that are about video games explicitly. And we've also seen elements of virtual reality and those themes and ideas starting to really, really come into fashion. And the cynical side of me says, okay, are movies now no longer the dominant cultural form of storytelling or mainstream artistic expression? Have movies now been replaced by both video games and television? Because with things like the MCU, I mean, the MCU's whole thing is that it is like a television show or comics. It is episodic. It's all spread out. The movie is no longer its own self-contained thing. It's almost like one long TV series. And I find myself kind of sad, even though that maybe that's true, and maybe that just means great things are around the corner. Video games and virtual reality and television are really going to go through a renaissance, and we're going to see some amazing things in those mediums. But it kind of makes me sad to think that movies may be on the decline, and as a result, they are trying to now copy and imitate these other mediums. I don't know if y'all have any thoughts about that, but it's just something that this conversation made me think of.
I can see where your cynicism would take over and think that way, but I think that we're in a state of flux when it comes to media and media consumption and all the types of media that bombards us, that I think it's just a state of flux. It's just a transition period forever, however long it's going to be. It's a transition period until it all sorts itself out again. And I'm sure there will always be a blur, a mix or whatever, but I think movies in some form or fashion, as you knew it, will come back, have a resurgence. I don't know. I probably don't look at it as cynically as you. I just see it as a transition period that we're in the moment. Now, in terms of going back to Joe Carnahan, and this movie actually was the first time that I became concerned for his a collaboration with Frank Grillo in remaking The Raid. You had heard about this a few years ago, right, guys?
Yes.
Yeah. And this movie got me the most concerned for the first time, and thankfully, it's no longer going to be a straight up remake. It's going to be titled something different. I can't remember what it is, but it's going to be like inspired by The Raid, but still.
Because I mean, unless you have Iko Uwais, it's not going to be The Raid. Unless you have that level of fighting ability in all your actors and stuntmen,
right? Not
going to be The Raid.
Yeah, and as entertaining as Frank Grillo is in his own right, he's no Iko Uwais or anywhere close to that. So yeah, they've rejiggered it to be something inspired by and not a complete remake. But I am interested in a movie that Joe Carnahan is directing with Frank Grillo again, and also co-starring Gerard Butler, called Cop Shop, which hopefully comes out this year. And I'll probably say it right now, it's going to be the best movie of the year. A small town police station becomes the unlikely battleground between a professional hitman, a smart female rookie cop, and a double-crossing con man who seek refuge behind bars with no place left to run. I'm all over this, guys, because it has Gerard Butler. Anyways, let's get into grades. Andrew, what grade would you give Boss Level?
Oh gosh, I'd give Boss Level C+, B-, kind of around in that territory.
This is a solid B movie. It's fun. It's solid. It's literally a B movie, and it's a solid B. That's what I'm giving it. Wally.
And we're live.
Oh God.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you, Tim. It is a solid B movie. This movie's fun. Is it going to make my top 10 of the year for 2021? Probably not. Will it be worth mentioning at the end of the year? Probably. Maybe. I mean, still got plenty of year to go. But I think it's well made. I think it's fun. But it is what it is. It's a pretty lighthearted actioner. Nothing too crazy, but definitely a good time.
Hermano.
I'm right there with you guys. I was right at a B. I mean, I could go possibly as high as a B+ on a good day, but I think a B is where it sits.
All right, that does it for this episode of the First Time Watchers podcast. Donate via patreon.com/firsttimewatchers or buy stuff at zazzle.com/firsttimewatchers.
You can talk to us on Twitter at 1STTimeWatchers on Twitter.
Or write to us at our email, firsttimewatchers@gmail.com.
Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. We love feedback. If you have any suggestions of movies for us to watch, please send a tweet or an email. Speaking of suggestions, let's recommend a movie. Andrew.
I'm going to recommend another Joe Carnahan movie, and that is The Grey, starring Liam Neeson, which is a movie that I think some people were disappointed by because it didn't have the type of action that was promised by the trailers and the marketing, and yet I think it is probably Joe Carnahan's best film, in my opinion. It's just a really, really well done movie about guys trying to survive in the wilderness and death, and about how death is the ultimate enemy that we all have to face someday. So yeah, check out The Grey.
You just stole Hermano, so I'll go next. I didn't realize that until afterwards that Frank Grillo was also in The Grey, but another movie I caught this past weekend, a rewatch for me, and I didn't even realize it until I was watching it. I was like, hey, Frank Grillo's in this too, and that is Warrior from 2011. The Joel Edgerton and Tom Hardy vehicle about brothers who find themselves in an MMA tournament, and by the end they fight each other. Look, I'm not spoiling anything because the poster spoils it, for fuck's sake. And I will say, with all due respect to Beyond Skyline, this is Frank Grillo's greatest performance. He plays Joel Edgerton's trainer and ringman, and he's really, really good in this movie for what he has to do. And as far as the movie, it's about this is how you take a predictable sports template and wring every emotion with the truest of sincerity, and you really earn each moment, and especially that ending, because that ending lands like a ton of bricks. It's really well done. Good movie, guys. Good movie. Oh, and Nick Nolte too, nominated for an Oscar, and he definitely deserved it. Warrior, recommend that. Wally.
All right, so you want some more Michelle Yeoh? Got some more Michelle Yeoh for you, and I'm going to recommend a movie that I watched not too long ago. That I it took me by surprise how much I actually loved this movie, how much fun this movie actually was, and how funny and full of heart it is. But from 2018's Crazy Rich Asians, directed by John Chu, contemporary romantic comedy based on the global bestseller, it follows native New York Rachel Chu to Singapore to meet her boyfriend's family. This movie's just great. It's done with a lot of heart. Obviously, I'm not Asian, but the way this movie is written and directed gives you that kind of insight that you need to be able to get everything that's going on in this film. So I would absolutely recommend it. It's lighthearted, it's funny, it's got romance, it's well made. It's great. It's great. So yeah, Crazy Rich Asians.
Hermano, what are you going to recommend that's not The Grey?
I wasn't going to recommend The Grey, to be honest, but this movie has a lot of Grey in it, the one I'm going to recommend. I was trying to think of, like, what is my favorite movie, either inspired by a video game or direct adaptation of a video game.
I know.
And I don't know if this is my favorite, but I think I've mentioned it in the past that I appreciate it quite a bit for what it did. From 2006, Silent Hill.
There you go.
Have we all seen this, Silent Hill?
No.
I have.
I have not.
Oh,
I have not seen it. I don't think. If I have seen it, I have forgotten it.
I played the video game, the first two at least, back in the day. Thought, they were in the vein of like something like Resident Evil, as far as video game goes. Maybe a little bit more obscure, a little creepier, going for a little more of a horror feel. I really, as far as video game movies, where they always stumble for me is that the movie adaptation always tries to change too much. Like they kind of use the video game as a template, but change way too much. Don't really stay faithful to the game, and I think that's always where it stumbles for me. Silent Hill did not. Silent Hill was probably the most faithful video game adaptation that I've seen. They don't change any of the character looks. The story is primarily the same. They add a few different characters, but for the most part, it's essentially the game made into a movie, which I really appreciated. And it's really heavy on the horror. It's directed by Christoph Gans, who I think is best known for Brotherhood of the Wolf, which is another great film, one of his earlier films from like 5 years prior to this. So I recommend Silent Hill, especially if you've played the game. I think you'll probably appreciate it more. I mean, the critics are not too heavy on this. It's got like a 31 Metascore, a little bit better with users at 6.5 on IMDb. So I recommend Silent Hill.
Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.
Is this the one with Pyramid Head?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. That was very well done. Yeah.
Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. This was fun.
Where can people find you online?
You can find some of my writing at writerandrew.com, and you can follow me on Twitter and Letterboxd at writerandrew. And feel free to hop on and tell me how I'm much too negative, and I just need to sit back and relax and enjoy Frank Grillo punching things. I don't entirely disagree with you.
Stay tuned for our next episode. We'll be discussing something selected by our newest Patreon donor, the 2004 film Mean Creek.
That's the first time watch this podcast because we like to watch.
And we're live.